You're part of a nonprofit board. Maybe you're on the staff, you're the executive director, or somehow you are responsible for revenue for your nonprofit. Do you know the 10 ways that you can get revenue for your nonprofit? It's more than just parties and grants. Let's get started. First of all, what's a revenue source? Revenue source, like it says here, is any method that's going to bring income to your nonprofit. It can be, dozens of different things, but, we're going to cast that net pretty broadly so that we can talk about any number of things that nonprofits do all over the United States and all over the world to get income for them. And maybe the first one you think of is fundraising, right? Because, fundraising is one of the advantages of being a charity, of being a nonprofit, is that you can ask people for money. And in most countries, there's some tax advantage for people to give money to you. And there are a lot of ways of doing this, right? And I'm not going to get into all the methods here, but you see some on the screen. There's direct gifts. Individuals and businesses simply write you a check or give you, credit card number or whatever. Crowdfunding or social media, planned giving. In the United States, more people who die, more dead people, give money than businesses and corporations. And then, there's events and sales. And I say non-UBIT, because we're going to talk about that, but that's a tax thing that I think is worth considering. But these things, if you're not going to get in trouble with at least the tax authorities in the United States, either need to be episodic, volunteer-driven, mission-related, or better yet, some combination of all three of those. Now, so fundraising is just one of the options you have, but it certainly isn't the only one. Well, there's grants. Now, I throw grants in separately from fundraising, although, I could legitimately argue that they're part of fundraising, but so many people approach grants as something different, which is why I think it's important to treat it separately here. We're talking about nonprofit foundations. In the United States, those are foundations, people who have gathered a sum of money, typically from one or just a couple of sources, and then distribute that money. Usually it's the interest off that money or some earnings as opposed to the corpus itself over a period of time, maybe sometimes even in perpetuity, to charitable causes. Now, they can be large and small. They typically have some sort of application process. But the important thing here is that it should be a mutually beneficial match between your mission and theirs. Their goal is to make things happen in whatever mission they defined, or geographic area. That's another big thing. But they don't have the means. They're not an operating foundation, which, if you hear that phrase, is that they actually carry out their own programs. Now, most foundations simply give out the money so that other people can accomplish these goals. And you see there's lots of different kinds of foundations. I'm not going to get into the details, but you'll hear things like family foundations, right? That's typically money that comes from a particular family, or a business foundation, the same. Private foundations tend to be a little bit bigger. They may have started with a corpus from a particular family, but it's evolved since then. But all of these are under the phrase foundation. We're not talking about government entities. We're not talking about other things. We're talking about places that will receive a grant application for making a philanthropic gift. So that's another way. Memberships. Interesting that there is always some confusion, I find, about memberships. A membership is when somebody pays you some sum of money and that they get back specific benefits for that money. So a charitable gift is when they give you the sum of money and they don't give back the benefits. And in fact, sometimes you'll see a little caveat written in, no benefits or goods or services were given, right? Well, the IRS in the United States has a little threshold on that. If you give somebody a bookmark or some little token, that's fine, but they're not buying something. Well, a membership, you're buying something. You are actually getting benefits of goods or services back for that. Maybe it's access to a museum. Maybe it's some a park or something. It's typically an access thing. That's the big thing. You find museums, galleries, some nature preserves have memberships. You might get discounts on certain items in a bookstore or a gift shop. Those are all benefits of a membership. Memberships are not tax deductible. There is a return on that gift, a quid pro quo, right? They give you the money, you give them some sort of service or access, whatever that membership entails. And be careful. Sometimes memberships can imply some means of voting rights. So if you have an annual meeting or there's something going on that involves a lot of people every year, board meetings, whatever, members, if you don't set it up correctly, might actually have rights there. So you want to check that out, particularly with your state laws that way. So memberships. Akin to memberships is sponsorships, and think of it as a corporate membership of some sort. So, we've all maybe gone to a golf tournament or some kind of event, this event sponsored by, and you see the banner up there. Again, same kind of thing. You're getting a return. The business who gives that money is getting a return on their investment, whether in advertising or access. Those are usually the two big things. And that banner, some sort of ad in the program book, 4 people on the foursome, all come with that sponsorship, right? That's what we're talking about here. So again, it's not a charitable gift. You're giving away something in exchange for that sum of money. So sponsorships, that's another one of your methods. All right, business income. Business income is fascinating because we're talking about things that are not mission related. And here I use that phrase UBIT again. And that's unrelated business income tax. Unrelated business income tax, UBIT. So what that means is that this operation, whatever it is not related to whatever your core is so far as your mission goes. And so if you ever walked into a college bookstore, and some of them do this, they have these 2 sections. They have where all the sweatshirts and the fun little things you buy that have the school's logo on it, right? And then they have the book section. Well, that's not by accident. Actually, they are cordoning off square footage to say that stuff is not UBIT. That is related to our mission. You buy a book at a university for a class, that's related to the mission of the university. This other stuff, buying a sweatshirt that says, your school on it, is not related to the mission. So that stuff is taxable like a regular business. That's the difference. Now you see this in museum shops, sometimes restaurants and campuses, depending, or other venues like in a museum maybe. It's really, or you could own an outside business. I worked for a university that happened to own a car painting business far away. It was gifted to them through an estate, and they kept it going for a little bit, right? But they paid taxes on it. Or another place I worked owned a set of apartments nearby. Again, wasn't related to their mission. It seemed like a good investment. They were helping improve the neighborhood, but that was definitely taxable. So nonprofits can own businesses. You can operate it just like any other business. However, usually, if it's not related to your mission, if you can't make a strong argument with that, and it's not between me or you, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a lawyer, right? But the IRS will look at it first as a business until you prove otherwise. Okay, auxiliary enterprises that are mission related. And this is the opposite side of that coin. So remember we talked about that bookstore, that college bookstore, and how it had the book section, right? That was even, sometimes I've even seen little fences across or something. But anyhow, that's mission related. That's non-UBIT auxiliary enterprise. Food service at a college might be that. Sometimes space rentals, sometimes not, depending on the nature of what you do. That could be taxable. It may not. be taxable. Thrift stores are interesting. Most organizations I know that have thrift stores are non-taxable. That income is not taxable because it often will carry out the mission of the organization. There's a halfway house near here, near a state prison. They have a whole series of thrift stores in the area. They use those thrift stores to help the ex-offenders reintegrate into society by, giving them jobs, teaching them job skills, that sort of thing. That is definitely mission related. Those aren't taxable. And so that's the kind of thing you have to look at. Again, talk to your accountant, your attorney to figure out what you have there. But again, the more you can make it mission related, the better off you are, at least as far as taxes go. But by the way, don't let UBIT scare you off. It's okay to pay taxes if you're making enough profit to support your mission. So either way, just know that there's some things that are and some things that aren't. All right, fee for service income from mission recipients. I'll bet you may not guess that this is actually the biggest income generator for nonprofits across the United States. That's fee for service. So think of college tuition. That's a fee for service, right? Think about some forms of hospital billing. You go to the hospital for 3 days, and if you don't have insurance, or even if you do have insurance, we don't have to get into that, you're going to maybe pay some money toward that. Or museum tickets, or, anything that you are providing a service and charging a fee for and realizing income, it could be part of your mission, right, is to offer that service and people will pay for it. That is a revenue generator for you. And it's a very popular revenue generator, and it's one that shouldn't be overlooked. One of the things that I find in my career I found is that when people pay for services, they value them more, even though you deeply discount that service. It really makes a big difference to people to have that dignity of paying for something themselves, even at a lower rate. Government income. Now, I threw a lot of things in here, but it's important to realize that government income comes from all levels of government, from municipal, state, provincial, national, federal, right? There is a really strong tie between government income and nonprofits, particularly over the last 50 years or so. And yet, these are often fee-for-service arrangements. You're going to start a daycare center, you get a grant from the state government to do that. Well, yeah, it feels like a charitable grant, but you have deliverables. You have things you have to do. So that is a fee-for-service kind of arrangement that comes from a government entity. But you see here, that's not the only kind. I mean, there's, like I said, fee-for-service, there's legislative appropriations. So a government entity, maybe you have a lobbyist, maybe you don't. Maybe you just talk to your local representative at whatever legislature it was, and they said, hey, we need money for this, and him or her said, oh, okay, that's great, let's I'll put that in the next bill, and boom, the bill passes and you get the cash. That's not bad. It doesn't always, it won't work quite that easily, but the point is, though, that you can get legislative appropriations. You can also get what in many states is known as walking around money, which is in some legislative bodies, they have every person has a sum of money that they can distribute in their district for whatever good purposes are in your district. And so it just takes a little bit of political connection to tap into that. So these are all worth investigating. The fee-for-service grants, legislative appropriation, and the walking around money. All right, endowment. This is your nonprofit savings account, or at least, it's like that. I wouldn't say it's specifically that. But the point is that donors will often give you money for what they're calling the endowment, for your endowment, for a savings account, which almost acts like an internal foundation. You get to draw money, and there's a lot of stuff behind this that is very simplified, but that you put in $100,000, $10,000, $1,000, right, whatever it is, and you draw the interest off that or some portion of that interest to pay for whatever expenses are either ongoing, and generally, you're able to do that, or are specifically focused on by the agreement you made with the donor. So if the donor wants you to give it to scholarships, then that's the only way you can spend that money. Let me say that again. That's the only way you can spend that money. You don't want to get in trouble with this. But it is good because then you're able to take the money you may have put toward those, whatever that designated purpose of that endowment is, and spend that money somewhere else. Because as they say, money is fluid, it's fungible. So there's endowments that you hold that are designated by an outside source, usually a donor. So sometimes, go back to fundraising, you saw planned gifts, right? A trust or an estate. Then there's what's called quasi-endowment, these are reserve funds. So let's say, it's great. You had a little extra money at the end of the year. Let's say you had $5,000 at the end of the year. And you're saying, wow, well, let's just bank this away. Well, let's put it in a fund that we're going to treat just like an endowment, except it's not endowment. Now, the difference, a really big difference here, is that if you need to, you can go into the quasi-endowment and spend the corpus of that without a problem. You put it there, you can take it out. You can't do that with regular endowment funds. You will probably need a court order to get money out of an endowment that is designated by an outside donor, to get into the corpus of that, where quasi-endowment you can do as you please that way. Think of it as almost like a permanent reserve fund. And then there's endowments held by third parties, which is interesting because like a community foundation, for example, might have funds that a donor designated to be used for your organization, except they gave it to the community foundation instead. Well, why would they do that? A lot of reasons. Sometimes it's the organization's small, they're not sure it's going to be around for a while. If you guys disappear, then those monies can be applied to some other purpose, in the community. But know that there is endowment held by third party. You probably already know about it, but that's slightly different than standard endowment. Now, third party payments. These are interesting because, there's a whole set of things that income that you might get that comes from other parties, but not the people who are actually using the services. So, for example, let's say somebody gets a scholarship from the Lions Club or the local Masonic Lodge to go to your school. Well, that's only triggered if the client is actually going, that student is actually going to go to your school. But a third party is paying for that because of that circumstance. That comes with the client, the patient, the student, whatever that you call your mission recipient. And the same thing with health insurance, and there are other situations where a third party pays, but it's almost always triggered by that particular client coming to your organization. So, how do you choose, right? I mean, there's 10 ways you can do this, and maybe you can come up with a couple more, right? But how do you choose which to do? Well, first of all, is it in your comfort zone? Now, this is probably the most dangerous part, because a lot of folks will pick only what's in their comfort zone and really miss out. So, good. Recognize, like a lot of people, I don't do fundraising, right? Well, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of opportunities in fundraising that may be comfortable. You just have this mental image of whatever it is that you don't like. So don't dismiss it out of hand. Just go in recognizing that may not be the most comfortable way of doing it, but it might be right for you. What's your expertise? Everybody comes with some kind of background and expertise and things, and it kind of works with comfort, right? And so that might lead down the path of some kind of way of generating revenue for your organization or not. What are your competitors doing? There are two sides to this. First of all, you need to look at what your competitors are doing, because it could be that those are really good ideas that you need to pursue too. If your competitor is doing a thrift store and you find that it's in one part of town and you can open up a thrift store in another part of town, go for it, because obviously it's a proven method. On the other hand, you also have to ask yourself, well, gosh, is the field already taken? Is there too much competition for whatever that method is that your competitor is also engaged in? So just analyze what your competitors are doing and evaluate, your next steps that way. Are there other objectives? And that's just not a broad thing to say. That is actually to say that, like, for example, in fundraising, you might run a special event and to raise money. That's a great thing. Everybody does it, right? But you also need the visibility. And a special event is a great way to get visibility. Otherwise, maybe you should go to a major gift program and just ask people who have means to contribute to your organization. You might get the same return. It's going to cost you less, definitely, but you're not going to get the visibility. So look at what are the other benefits, the other objectives of whatever it is that you're doing that maybe your organization can take advantage of. For example, like those thrift stores I talked about earlier. And having a thrift store is great, but being able to have them as job training programs is just really good. And that's, again, another objective besides just that income. And mission fit. This is really important. I am all about mission fit. You're a nonprofit, you're all about mission. And so ask yourself, does this method align with our mission, our ethics, our values of what we're all about as a nonprofit organization? There's some methods that might work or not. It really just depends on what you're doing. I know some organizations who don't take grants from governments because of social stances. I know some organizations that don't take, probably would never do a business because that's just not where they are, because it's not a fit for their mission. Whatever it is, just consider mission fit is really important. All right, I hope this helped you out. I hope that you saw the menu in front of you so far as these opportunities go. Don't forget to go to Nonprofit.Courses and check out all the videos, all the podcasts about all different kinds of revenue generation techniques. Now that you've seen this and you kind of see the big view, now you can go to Nonprofit.Courses and drill it down on what's best for you. This is Matt Hugg, president and founder of Nonprofit.Courses. Make it a great nonprofit day.